this started. And you can see my screen and you can hear me well. If anything changed, let me know if I moved the mic or something.
You can hear
Chris
you
is
well.
Here too. That's great. Thank you. So Chris is here. We'll be here. I'll share my screen, but if you have any questions, you can always put them in the chat. And I will try to have it open if I can figure out where the chat is. And then Chris will have it open too. So between the two of us, we should be able to help you with any questions.
Mustafa,
Yes.
the recording will be available after that?
Yes. The recording will be available, but I don't know when. It's up to the AECtech TC Core Studio team to give it to us. I won't have it available. Okay, then. And I know most of you are already users, maybe one or two are not. I haven't used it. So just feel free. Again, like this, we are recording this. We're supposed to reuse it and everything, but it's really, this workshop is for you guys to get, your questions out at any point. And at least for me, I have no issues people asking questions at any time. If it's something that we can answer later, we will just answer later. Just feel free to just, ask all your questions as they come, so we can have a good interactive workshop. With that, for anyone who is doing the editing later, this is like, thing that they do. So hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the workshop. Again, I'm Mustafa. Chris is also here on the call. Questions goes to the chat if you want. If anything happens, I'm not sharing my screen or forget or you can't hear me well, just let me know. We'll fix it as we go. So we're today going to cover Pollination Rhino plugin, right? We already had the hello part for 5 minutes of it. More people should join, but I think we have enough to get it started. I have 2 or 3 slides about what's pollination. Then I'll get to the Rhino side. So what we are going to do, it's kind of like the workshop is 2 sections. One is we will talk about how to build analytical model in Rhino plugin. And when I say analytical model, is basically an energy daylight comfort model, right? A pollination model, / a Honeybee model, a model that you can use for simulation. And then the second one is how to fix analytical model in Rhino that comes from somewhere else. So someone exports a GBXML file and they give it to you. You get an HVJSON file that's exported from Revit and it's not that clean. How do you clean up that? How do you reuse all those information that you have? And then we will have a Q&A session at the end. So Pollination is an ecosystem of tools for environmental building design and simulation. It is built and maintained by the same team who are behind Ladybug Tools, and they are kind of complementary. So a lot of pollination functionalities actually comes from Ladybug Tools, and they're using Ladybug Tools under the hood. And now some of the features that we develop for pollination is going back to Ladybug Tools. So if you have seen EPW map recently, we have an updated, better version of EPW map that we really developed for pollination apps, and now it's part of Ladybug Tools as an example. We have several products. We have the CAD plugins, apps, and then we have a web interface for collaboration and cloud computing. Today, mostly will be focused on Rhino, right? I'll touch base on Grasshopper a little bit. And again, if you have been to our workshops, it's always like, 50% is planned, 50% is based on what people want to see. We did a similar workshop last week for the Chicago event, and then we showed more Grasshopper because people wanted to see it, right? I might show apps depending on what you guys are interested. But my goal, like the scope, is to get you familiar with Rhino, and mostly will be focused on preparing geometry. Of course, running simulation is there, result visualization is there, and if there are questions that are related, we can cover them. But my main concern is geometry, which is like a big selling point and why people use the Rhino plugin in the first place. So what are the objectives? I hope you understand the overall workflow for drawing analytical models in Rhino by the end of this workshop. I hope you also understand the overall workflow for fixing models, where to start, what are the things that you check, and what are the commands that you use mostly. So I like you to know the most commonly used commands, and depending on what you do, they can be different. But I hope I give you an overview of what are the commands, and at some point you should be able to think of, oh, there should be a command for that thing. And if it's not, you should ask us. So maybe we can add a command for that. And then finally, I hope you understand what are the possibilities of mixing Rhino plugin with Ladybug Tools. I know most of people here are also Ladybug Tools users, and this Rhino plugin, at least for our core team, has been a huge time saver now for building models and kind of how we still combine it with Ladybug Tools, but we don't have to do everything in Grasshopper, uh, which has been rewarding. Okay, with that, let's get started. The first step is basically against this thing that we have on our website. We always say stop drawing analytical models from scratch. But in real world, sometimes you have to draw analytical models from scratch. So if you do it with the Rhino plugin. And I hope I can show you why. It's good to do it with the Rhino plugin. So our first exercise is going to create this model. I'm going to use two different ways of doing it. So the first one is I'm going to draw it over plan. So the idea is, oh, you get a 2D model with some windows. And then the second one, I will delete that. And then I'm going to use the 3D geometry that we have. So what you do if you have 3D geometry already, that's ready. And that's kind of how you would prepare it for Ladybug Tools studies usually. Okay, let's go and open Rhino. I hope everyone has Rhino open. If you have Rhino open, can you please do me a favor and do PO check? No, sorry, PO license manager command, and make sure that you have a valid license. If you do not have a valid license, and when you try to sign in and retrieve retrieve a new license, you can't do it, put your information in the chat so Chris can add you to a license pool so you can get a license. I imagine most of you should have because I already shared, or if you're using the trial, then you already have a license. Okay, now that you all have the license, if you type the command pollination, this tab should pop up if you don't have it already, right? This is the panel, basically Pollination Rhino panel that we will be using. This is the place that we will see all the geometry, all the information, all the rooms. Some of the commands that I'm going to use also are available from this UI. I personally use a lot more command line than using the UI, but I try to show where they are in the UI. I mean, learning the commands is usually better, I think, because in the long run, the commands almost stay the same, but the UI can change. And I mean, we're not going to do anything crazy at this point, just to make sure there's many people using it and there will not be any major changes overnight. But knowing commands is always easier and it's almost always stays the same. Okay, with that, let's just check this model. If I go under layers here, so I have a 2D plan that I received in this model, right? You see that, and it's nice because they even drew the lines between the walls. So I have the middle of the lines, so I can basically use it for preparing an energy model, right? Then there is a 2D elevation here that has some of the windows, so I can use them to draw windows. And there is also a full 3D model here that has all the shades and everything and the geometry in 3D, right? Everyone is comfortable with layers and how they work. I hope that yours is here. And there is another layer here for energy model. That's the current layer. So if we build something goes into energy model. The only thing I'm going to do, and this model is in meters. Sorry, IP people, but this is the better unit system, I have to say. even after all these years, I can't change my brain to work the other way around. But here you go. So this is 3 meters. So the floor to floor height, that's 3 meters. That's the only value that I really need at this point. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn off the 3D model. I'm going to lock the 2D plan layer. So I just click here, lock the whole 2D plan. And I can even lock the 2D elevation for Windows. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to trace this plan to build the model, right? So the process is always you build the rooms first, then you add the windows and doors and skylights and everything to them. So for windows and skylights in Pollination, we use aperture because aperture basically covers both of them. So when you hear us saying aperture, basically there's any opening that the light can get through the space. So to do that, there is a command called PO draw rooms or draw room. Okay, the command is PO draw room, and it helps you draw room. So a couple of things that you have to set. One is the elevation. So where do you want to draw this room? What's the elevation of the plan that you're drawing? In my machine, it's 3 because I have used it before. Probably it was 3. By default, it's usually 0. This is at 0 too. But if you don't know, you have this item for option for elevation by point. I just click on this and then I click here. So you see the elevation is now set to 0. So it's like a quick way to set where the elevation is. And the elevation is the place that the plan will be drawn. The other one is the height of the room. So I just measured and I know the height is 3 meters. So for you, if it's different, you can click on this and type the value, right? I can change it to 3.2, for example. But click here, type 3, and that works. So now that I have that, by default, this PO draw rooms in as rectangles. So I can click here from one corner, go all the way to the other corner, and the room is drawn. If I go back here under this Rhino panel, I'll see there is a room there called room 1, and it has all these different faces. All right, so this is a thermal zone. Let's say it's a room and it has the face types and all those are already set. If you had issues with the snapping when you try to draw the room, then you want to make sure the OS snap is on here. And then you want to have, for example, end at least is selected, perpendicular is selected. I mean, you can set it. Again, I assume most of you already know enough of Rhino, so I'm not going to go through all these details here. What I'm going to do, I usually use wireframe. I know different people have different taste. So just pick the one that works the best for you and go ahead and try to draw all the rooms. Again, I know most of you are already advanced users, so I'm going to take more risk here, even though it's an online workshop. So for example, for the second one, I'm going to do again PO add rooms, or no, sorry, PO draw room. And I'm going to draw this room here. The same here. Finally here. And I keep the hallway in the middle to the last. And I'm going to save this file. So if anyone wants to, oh, this is actually the sample model I just saved over. So let me, sorry, save as in class. Maybe I do. So again, the in-class folder is where I'm saving this file. So at any point, if you want to get access to the model that I have, you can do that. So I just drew all the rooms, right? 6 rooms so far. Then I'm going to turn this on, color by face type, just as a feature that you know. So we have different color by items here up here. One is color by face type. These colors looks like OpenStudio colors, right? So if you're using wireframe and sometimes you want to see if the geometry is correct and check it, you can use this quickly. We have another one for color by boundary condition, which we will use through the course. We have one that shows the normal, face normals. In this case, we just drew everything with pollination command, so everything should be fine. And then we have color by face properties and color by face properties and color by room properties. So they're all these things that you can check. For now, everything is default. I'm not going to use them. But there is one other thing that I wanted to show. So if I do color by face type or color by any of this, we have this filtering here, or it's called render settings. You can click on this and it gives you more control based on face type and boundary condition filter. So what I can do, for example, I can say, don't show the roof ceilings, right? When you want to draw a plan and you want just to see it, you can just turn this off. Or when we go and check the boundary condition, you can use this to remove all the outdoor faces, right? So for example, all the outdoor are now removed. I only see these ones which are ground contact. Make sense so far? And again, this is something that this is like the way I do use it, but you have to figure out your own style of like what's the best way. What is important is this gives you a visual way to make sure your model is designed and it's just created the way it's supposed to be. We just had a call yesterday about some user using another software somewhere, and they ran like he said like a day or two spending time to figure out why the load was really high. And then they taught it's energy simulation that they're using that software. Turned out the faces they were not exactly touching, and all the floor was set to outdoor, and they didn't know because there was no visual way for you to see it. Here there is, and just take advantage of that before running your model, so you don't do any of those mistakes. So now for this one in the middle, what I'm going to use the same command, PO draw room. And one thing that you see is this renderer can stay open here if you want during the process. I mean, I can close it, of course, but I can leave it open. Here, instead of just clicking and trying to draw because there will be a rectangle, I click on freeform. And freeform basically let me do a polygon around here. If you have issues with like working in 3D, you can always go in plan view and draw this in plan too. Okay, so this one is added here. Again, I can do turn this back on so I can see them. And probably a good time for me to save this. Any questions so far?
Yes, the direction of the tracing matters.
No, it will fix it for you. So all of this gets fixed. As long as it's a room, it's a valid closed room. We do all the math for like figuring out the normals facing outside and all those. I think that's one of the beauties of the Rhino plugin, right? We guarantee to take care of those as long as you build a valid model. Any other questions? Okay, if there are no questions, so this was one of the three methods of adding a room. So if I click here on plus, there are three ways of adding a room. The one that I just showed you is draw a room. That basically you draw. The other one is select geometries, which is the one that I'm going to use next, to use that 3D models that it's already in the sample file. And we have another one for select by layers. So if you have your rooms in different layers, for different program types, it's usually useful for energy modeling. You can basically say select by layers, and then it select the geometries under each layer. And then you can assign construction set, program types, and all those. layer by layer. It just makes it faster to do that. I'm not going to show the third one in this workshop, but there are videos out there and there is documentation that you can see and watch if you want. So now that I did that, the next step is to add apertures. Similarly, there are different ways to add aperture if I click here. So one is by selecting geometries, which goes hand in hand with this one for selecting geometries, right, for room. The other one is for adding based on window to bar ratio. You can basically say 40%, 50%, anything that you want, and that will work. And the last one is by drawing them, so which is what we are using now. So I'm going to use draw apertures as the third option. This is the same as the command PO draw apertures, right? So when you want to draw apertures on a plan, there are usually two basic ways of drawing apertures. One is this way, that somebody already, you have either the geometry, you have the model, so it is on the elevation. So the mode is called elevation plan, which is a bit confusing because it has plan, but it means like use elevation as the active plane for what we want. So what I can do if I press space, is room or faces that you want to add, room faces or orphan faces that you want to draw the aperture. So I hold down Control Shift and I select this room. Like click on the edge, then it will let you select the faces, right? If you do the normal selection, it will only select the room. Or maybe Mingbo has already improved this command. Let me see. I don't need Control Shift. There you go. I didn't even know this is an improvement. You can just select it and it selects the face. Great. That's even better. So now I select the room. I can press one space. I select solid the face, and now I can start drawing it, right? Similar to what we had, you can do freeform, but default is a rectangle. So as soon as I do it, it just draws the aperture, right? I'm going to do it for another room, and I'll let you do the other two rooms. So click on PO draw aperture, click to select the face, right? Because I'm in elevation mode, I'm fine. I just click here and click here, and it draws the window for me, creates the window for me. So a few magical thing happens here. Like in Rhino, usually if you want to do that, you have to just do few commands to be able to draw in that plane, in that face. But the Rhino plugin automates that for you. The other thing is because it basically goes to the face that you have. If you have a model which is not as clean as this model, so let me go in this layer. You don't have to do this, but I'll just do it because I locked this. If I move this, let's say you had a model and there was a wall thickness, right? So the window is not necessarily like as clean and it's not on top of the face. It's something like this, what I have here. Even if you have something like this command will work because I can do PO add apertures, or sorry, draw apertures. And I can select the face. And now watch this. I'm just drawing this thing here. And this is automatically projected to the face that I have. Okay, question, my model looks closed on top. No, you didn't miss anything. This is the place. Because I use this render settings and I turned off roof ceilings. So I didn't want the roof ceilings to be visible.
Oh, got it.
But
That's just a visibility then.
Right. It was a
Okay.
visibility setting to be able to see
Perfect.
what's going on. Yeah, I think we should add something on the viewport that tells you that's what's going on. I have been confused myself. I have to confess that there has been cases that I'm just like, where is the face? But you also, I work in wireframe. I think if you go, I think we overwrite it, right? In shaded, yes. But in shaded, you can see these lines based on the settings. So that might be another choice. In any case, I'm going to add this other aperture too. PO draw apertures. And here we go. I'm going to save my model. Any questions so far?
Yes, I have one question.
Mm.
You need to select by room, or you can select all the faces and then the windows in one way, in one
You can draw multiple
option
windows. Yes.
for,
So
for different rooms. So,
for
what I
different
mean is that
rooms.
to do what you did one by one, to do all at once.
Sure.
To select the faces
Let's
and
test it.
and drop the windows.
So I select this. I select this. I hold down Shift. I select this. 1, 2, 3,
Okay.
4. That one is invalid, but here you go.
Okay.
So, yes. And then you can Control Z, and it goes back. Great
Thank
question, Abraham. Any other questions? Okay, so now the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off this by type, right? Is here. And I don't know if you have a command for this one, but I turn off color by face by type. So we have windows here, right, that I do not have the geometry for, like what I had there. But still, I can use this command to draw them. The only thing that I need to know is the distance, the seal height, basically. So it's 1.1 meters, and the height of the window is 1.5, right? So what I can do, I can use the same command and say PO draw apertures, select the face. This time I'm going to use the floor plan mode. So you're drawing in floor plan. And now you will see I have new options. So there is one for sill height, which I'm going to set to 1.1. And another one is for the window height, which I'm going to set to 1.5. Right? And now I can just draw from here to here, and it knows the rat, so it just does it for me. Again, for this one, we can do, I can use the same command, draw apertures, select this face, hold down and select this face too. And then in plan mode, I can draw one aperture here. And I can draw another aperture here. So here you go. Any questions? Makes sense? So you have basically two different modes for drawing apertures, depending on what the geometry that you get. If it's only a drawing in 2D, you usually want this one to draw in plan mode. If you're lucky and you get something in 3D, then you can just draw on top of that quickly. If that usually, like if you bring a model from a SketchUp, let's say, right? And you have all those windows all over the place, you can use this to quickly clean it up. So the next step for this is I'm going to, so if we wanted to use this for an energy model, as most of you know, the next step is basically to do solve adjacency, right? To make sure all the rooms, so interiors from exteriors are correctly identified. And the other reason I do this is to make sure when I modeled the rooms, I did it right. It wasn't like they were not, there's no gap in anything. So the command for that is PO solve adjacency. And I set intersect to yes, face type match also to yes, and everything else can stay no. And I just select them and I let it run.
What is the command? PO solve adjacent.
Yes, PO solve adjacency. And now if I do color by type, it will show me the indoor versus outdoor. So Victor, test drawing single aperture across two rooms. I don't think that works. Does it work? I don't think we support that. Let's see. PO, we don't support that yet, but that's a good idea. Here and here. So let's do this. Is it still valid? No, we didn't add it. No, sorry about that for now. But if you have a case like this, what you can do a split face. I mean, you know that, right? Like, so the point is you want this to be automated. So I'm not going to go through the process of how to do it. But yes, unfortunately, right now you cannot draw and automatically have it being like splitted between rooms. But that's a good command to have. I agree. As a feature request. And I think you already posted that on Discord. Otherwise, I think this is one that we want to have on Discord. Okay. So with that, now we have this. I went here, clicked here. You can see, you can quickly check all the interior faces. In my case, I drew them correctly, so they matching. Anyone sees here a blue face? If you see that, then probably you have to go and fix your drawings for the rooms. One last thing is you can also do the same thing for doors. So if you check this model here, there is one door here. So for that, there is a command, I think, for draw doors, right? Sorry, PO draw doors that I almost never use, but I think it should work. So floor plan, let's select this face. And then it gives me the floor elevation. Sill height is like a few centimeters, and the height is 2.1. So here you go, and this is the door. Any questions so far? No. Okay, this is what would be like the first step. So draw everything, do a quick solve adjacency. Then the next step is you run the command PO validate model. We will use this more when we work on fixing geometry. But PO validate model is a command that basically checks this model and makes sure all the issues that can happen with a model are not going to happen, at least the ones that we are aware of for geometry, right? There is a good documentation on what PO validate command basically covers in our documentation, so you can check those. But you can think about anything and everything geometry-wise. So if you have an aperture which is outside the face, it will catch it. If you have an aperture which is not inside the face, it will catch it. If you have rooms that are inside each other, right, which happens a lot of time, it will catch it and it will tell you about that and you can fix it. I'm not going to go through it because we have another example, but I want you to just learn the steps. One, drawing. Two, do a quick solve adjacency. You can do validation before solve adjacency too, but if you do, then you want to do another one after solve adjacency. And then when you do these 3 steps and you have a valid model and visually it looks fine, then your model is ready. You can save it to IES. You can just go to Pollination and run a simulation. You can bring it to Grasshopper and run a simulation with Ladybug Tools. You can do anything and everything that you want. This is basically your model, right? There are next steps that I'm not going to talk about a lot in this workshop. I'm not going to cover it extensively, but for you to know is when you have a room, let's say this room, I just select this one. You can basically come here, double click on it, or you can press this edit button here, and you have access to all the properties for that room. So I can call this bedroom 1, right? And then I can change the construction set, but usually you want to change the construction set for the whole building, but I can go and change the program type from a generic type. And I always forget what's the program type that's it's not residential.
Mid-rise apartment.
Mid-rise, God, yes. Like mid-rise this is the closest that we have. We should probably improve this, but there is a mid-rise apartment program. So I'm going to pick the one from 2004. Of course, we have it from different standards. And this is one of those things, again, I think like we have to improve to make it easier for people. So instead of seeing everything, you just, based on the year and location, you can just select it once. But that's something to talk about. But then I select the program type, and like now this has a different program type. I can also select the HVAC and assign it, service hot water. This is all there. The reason I did this single one here for program type is to show you that not only you can check the face type and check the adjacency, you can also do color by all the other properties. So now if I do color by, sorry for the program, if I do color by program type, energy program type, you'll see that these ones, they have no program, and this one has a mid-rise apartment. Makes sense. So you can quickly see this in like larger models. This is very useful to quickly identify what's going on. Of course, you can also do it here in the UI if you want. And then I can turn it off here. Go all the way down and turn it off if you want to turn it off. Any questions for this so far? I hope no one. Go ahead.
When I color my rooms by boundary condition, all of my interior walls are showing up as exterior blue walls. Is there a way to fix that?
Did you run the PO solve adjacency command? So if yours looks like this, PO reset boundary condition. This is how it looks like. If it looks like this, that means like you haven't run the solve adjacency. So if you do PO solve adjacency, then it will solve adjacency. Did it work? I mean, you might be on mute. We can't hear you, but.
Yeah, it worked. Sorry.
Okay, great. No, it's all good. So okay, then that's the whole thing. So I showed you how to draw rooms, how to solve adjacency, how to check quick validation, and how to edit properties if you want. Of course, you can edit properties for multiple rooms, right? If you want, you can just right click and, oh, actually Mingbo told me not to do this. So select everything and click on this, edit. It's easier. This button here, it just does the edit. And then, like, let's just change the HVAC and make all of them to have ideal air load. And now you'll see like this all have ideal air load. This one, bedroom. I mean, nothing that makes sense, but I'm going to do for bedroom, I'm going to, actually, I can't do it anymore here. I have to go to PO HVAC manager. But yeah, let me not do that for now because it can get confusing. But that's basically the whole process of preparing your room. If there is no question, I'm going to save this as a new model, 002. And I'm going to delete everything that I did so far. Why not? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the command PO select rooms. So similar to Rhino that has all those selections for you, Pollination comes with several selection commands. You have PO cell, you see PO selection, select apertures, doors, opaque faces, rooms, all those. So I just did PO select rooms to select the rooms, and then I'm going to press delete. And all the work that I did so far is gone. But don't worry, because one, I have a saved version for anyone who had some emotional attachment to that work. So you can go get that. Otherwise, we have the 3D model here. So I'm now going to use the 3D mode to model it. So I'm going to turn off the 2D elevation under layers, turn off the 2D plan, or maybe keep the 2D plan, but keep it locked, and then turn on the 3D geometry. So what I have here now, every room is basically coming as a poly surface, a closed one, right? And the windows here are modeled as surfaces. So the geometry is already built. This is again similar to how you would prepare your model for Ladybug Tools, let's say, right? When you have this kind of option, instead of using PO draw room, use another command called PO add rooms. So what this allows you to do is it lets you select all the rooms. So I go here in layers, right click, and I do select objects. Of course, you can just select them one by one if you want. That also works. This is just faster and easier. And then there are here some properties, like you can basically change the properties. Property here means, excuse me, construction set, program type, and HVAC. You can escape any existing room. If there is something room that you selected, it doesn't try to make another room. Then you can set the maximum roof angle. So right now, 30 degrees, it means anything that is, like the angle goes more than 30. If 31, it will be set to wall. Before that, or actually it's from here. So if it's more than 30 degrees, then it will be roof. Before that, it will be set to wall. For this case, everything is extruded, doesn't matter. And then name by layer is set to no, you can set it to yes. The name of the is rooms. So if you name by layer, it will use the name of the layer for display name. In any case, I press the space bar, and here you go, all my rooms are created. Right, and because I already had it to be colored by boundary condition, it's colored by boundary condition. I can do color by face type. Now, next thing was adding apertures. This time, again, I'm going to do PO add apertures instead of draw, right? And by now, you probably can follow the logic here. So the logic is select the room and select the geometry that should be aperture, and it will be added. So I'm going to select the rooms. Again, there are different ways. The easiest way for me is to select objects from Rhino layer, and then press enter or spacebar once when you select the rooms. The next step is says select planar surfaces for creating these windows, right? So I'm going to right click on Windows layer, select object, and press the spacebar. And that is my model. I mean, in real world, you don't usually get models as clean as this, of course, but the combination of the two commands is what is really useful. I think at this point, you should know how to add this door to this room, right? So it will be, there should be a command called PO add door. Let's see. Yes, there is one. It's the same thing. It says select the room that you want the door to be added to. So I just select the room. And it says select the geometry that needs to be the door. And I select that, and that adds the door. I give you a few seconds to catch up if you're following. Okay, now that you have this, by now you should know what's the next step. It's to run solve adjacency or run validation, depending on like where you want to check. If the model is a mess, I usually run validation before solve adjacency, and then I run it after solve adjacency, because you want to make sure everything works. So do PO validate model. By default, it selects everything. So, okay, the model is valid. And now because the model is valid, I'm going to do PO solve adjacency, select everything, run it, preview it, and see everything is fine. And of course, another, oops, PO validate model, because if things can go wrong, they will go wrong. Let me know if you have any questions, as I'm giving everyone some time to catch up.
Quick question there, Mustafa. So what would be something that would invalidate it? Like, would it be not watertight room, let's say, or if while editing, if we with the aperture, if it's not inside that surface, like if it goes outside or on the line, would that make it
Yes.
invalid? Okay.
Yes, those are actually two very good examples and very common examples. But there is more than that. It's so this is me being really lazy. To find the link, I'm going to make the model invalid. I'm going to do PO valid model. So now it tells me there is an invalid subsurface, and I'm like, oh, where is it? Oh, it's here. Surprise, surprise. But now if you want to see all the validation, if I click here on more info, so these are all the validation error codes that you can get. And you can see they're separated by core errors, which are the geometry mostly errors, then the radiance specific errors, then the energy simulation specific errors, and we have Dragonfly error codes all the way down here. So they are well documented, and I mean, if you know how it works in our office, anything that Chris writes about is just very well documented. This is done by Chris, so it's very well documented. So now you can go and every single of them, you can see what's the error, like how to fix it, and there are suggestions for how to fix them. We'll get there to fix this stuff. Like, don't worry, like we have a model for fixing, and I have one additional model depending on how quickly we go. That is like it has a lot to fix. It's like a real life model. It's not like a sample model, nicely modeled. A window with a message failed to load user library. We had this issue, Abraham, in the previous workshop too. So if I remember correctly, what Chris said is you have some custom construction or resources that are not valid. So it tries to load them. And so there is an easy way to fix it. What you can do, you can go down here next to settings. There is one called, I don't know what it's called, model resources. And then down here, there is a purge user library. So what purge user library does, it basically purges all your custom user libraries. It actually makes a, what's that, backup. It says don't do it, but it does. So don't listen to that. Then if you purge that and restart Rhino, everything should work.
Yeah, and maybe just to say it's possible that what you have in your user library is in fact valid. It's just the Rhino plugin might not be updated to accept. You might have like one of the new types of window constructions, for example, that hasn't been exposed in the Rhino plugin yet. So yeah, I mean, if you do keep getting that error, just yeah, you can send us your standards library on like the discourse, and we'll make sure that it's that if you want to make sure you can keep using all those user standards, that it works and it's compatible with the Rhino plugin.
Great. And there is a command, of course, PO purge user library if you want to use it from the command line. Okay, another question from Victor. Anyone else running into duplicate subface identifier error when validating after adding apertures? I don't think so, unless like, how did you model that? I love that you hit that error. So that error basically says, and it's hard to create that error actually. I don't know how you created it, but the problem that happens is you have two faces, two apertures that they have the same exact identifier. That makes the model invalid. So the way you can fix that is you can use the command called PO reset identifier. And that will help you and make sure the ID is set to generate new ID. And then faces is set to yes. And then select your model and it will reset all the identifiers. You have to do the resolve adjacency again. You have to remove and resolve that. But that's what the error says. Any other questions, validation errors? Okay. So if you don't have any other errors, the last step here is to create the shades, right? I created almost everything, but not the shades yet. So you can see again, shades are in a very clean, like here in this shades layer. So all you need to do, I mean, again, as by now you should be able to guess, there should be a command that lets you add shades, right? And there are a few of them. So you can add them from here by clicking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is add shades one. We do not have draw shades, at least yet, if I'm not mistaken. And we have to do some improvements here to be able. So if you have mesh shade and all those, it's something that will come later that you can basically handle more complex shades in your model. But for now, it's very similar, right? You just decide to make this as a shade. And then these shades are technically building shades, right? Because they are next to your building. If you have another building here, right? If there was another one here, there was a box that was casting shadow. So then I would consider this to be a side context, right? I just select that. So this will be a side context. And because I'm coloring by type, this will be white. So I'll do it. I change it so now you can see. So this is shade. And then for this one, for all the other shades that I have, I'm going to select objects, go back here, and create them as building shades. And you can see the color is slightly different. So some of you might be thinking, why would you bother to have different types of shades, right? So there are at least two good reasons for doing that. One is if you are an IES-VE user here, if you want to export them to IES later on, the shades that are next to building are going to be local shades or local objects. And this one will be exported as adjacent buildings. So that's for IES-VE users. If you're not an IES-VE users, if you're Ladybug Tools users or Pollination users use to run this study here inside, mainly this comes handy. There are two things. I think Chris said one of them in the workshop in the morning. One is the default material for them is different. But the second one is for some code compliance routines or recipes, you know, you need to keep you remove the building shades, the ones that are adjacent to the building, but then you remove the ones are like other buildings in the site, for example, for that. So if you're going to use your model there, then these two different type of shades are going to matter. Otherwise, for a typical energy simulation, except for the default construction or default material, and for shading energy plus doesn't make that much a difference. They are basically the same. The aperture shade is mostly there because it's really helpful for some advanced custom workflows that we had to make. That we wanted to know like the ones on the aperture are different so we can swap them dynamically basically through the process. I don't know how useful it is for if you're using the user interface. Any questions? What hosted shade refer to? So if you want to have a shade that is part of a face, that's what's called a hosted shade. Am I correct, Chris? Yes.
Yes, yeah. I mean, you can assign a shade to a specific window or to a specific room or face. Honestly, I mean, it doesn't really affect the simulation that much to assign it to to a specific object, but it can be useful. I think, for example, in like the really advanced annual daylight workflows that we have, where you can, looking at daylight within a specific room, you can assign the shade just to that room, and that shade will only basically be a part of the calculation of that room. But
So
yeah,
let's say you have this, and this is of course invalid. So let me move it inside and then do PO add aperture to this guy and aperture this. So what you can do, let's say you have and then I'm going to move this from here to here. I'm going to copy this from here a little bit lower to here. Okay. So now if I want to make a shade here, I can go here and do hosted shade. It says select where it needs to be hosted, right? I'm going to select this face and then select the surface. It goes here. So this face, if I go and check it here, so I was in the under this rooms, right? There is one here for all the orphan faces. So in here, you see all the other shades are just hanging out for themselves. This particular shade is now part of this face that you have. It means if you delete this face, that will be deleted. If you move it, it will move with it. It's just like how you group them. And again, it's mostly useful for cases that you want to run something parametrically. And for example, you want to say anything that is assigned to this face, remove it, something like that. Does it make sense? For most cases, you can just ignore it, honestly.
So does it matter if I select the aperture shade or the hosted shade there?
Can you say it again?
So for other than the hosted shade, if I use the aperture shade, does
Aperture
it make
shade.
sense?
Yes, aperture shade can only be added to an aperture. So, and this is maybe a good time to say the two different selecting mode that you have in Rhino plugin. You might have noticed that when I select this object, it selects the whole room. So I can't select that single window, right? Even if I click. This is because by default, we set what we call a room selection mode. So you select only the room. If you want to access the apertures, you can turn it off by clicking on this icon here, right? And then now you can select these apertures directly. Why do you want to have that room mode all the time? Because if you move something you don't want the windows to stay here, right? You want everything to move with it. So by default, I would always work or I suggest you also to work in the room mode. So everything just moves with that room object. But now going back to the question of aperture shade. So now I can do select this command here and add aperture shade. Select the aperture here. I have to select this and then select this one. So did it even work? It should, I don't know why. So now you can see here, this is the aperture. This is the shade inside. So what it did, it actually took it and put it on top of the aperture. You see that? This is hosted inside the aperture. So now like we have a wall and the wall has an aperture and the aperture has a shade and the wall has a shade of itself. It's mostly the hierarchy of how they're related. Again, the reason we did this is just we develop a lot of very particular advanced workflows for companies who work on like dynamic glass or window control and all those. And we need the apertures to know which aperture is part of the window, which aperture is a generic aperture that they have just in the model. So we can programmatically change them or remove them or add them for the studies. For most of your use cases, you can just go with normal shade and it should be fine. Except, of course, for if you go to IES, I would recommend to model this as building, as like context shade and the rest as building shade. Chris, you wanted to add something?
I just wanted to explain like what had happened there when you use the aperture shades. So this is meant to be like if you want to generate louvers or an overhang from the aperture geometry, there are a few different modes that are used by default. I think so. Mustafa used, I think, louver shades, which is the default one, but you can do an extruded border shade, which helps you account for the thickness of walls around that aperture. Yeah, or I mean, you could also have detailed shades as well, but yeah, I think the way it's set up now.
Yeah, this is the default mode was louver shades, so it can be
borders.
border. Is it going to crash because I have already one? Let's try.
Should be fine. I think it just adds
No.
2 in that
You think
spot.
so? No, it didn't.
Oh no, you're right. It probably erased them and then re-added them.
Yeah, I have to delete that. Again, yeah, like we're getting too much into shady stuff. So let's get out of shady stuff and get back to room and all those. But I hope this was helpful to know like how much you can go in detail. I think that's one of the great things about the HB JSON schema and Honeybee model in general, which is the layer under the hood that all this geometry is saved, because it comes from like real world scenarios that we had to deal with. We have things there that maybe for generic use it doesn't make sense, but unless you have that kind of things come up, then you see, oh, you can do it here, which makes things much easier. Any other questions?
These are mostly for shading and stuff, but blinds is not something that we physically model this stage, or no?
You can. If you want, you can, but you know, like in energy, depending on how you want to do it. I don't know if you have energy plus material for that exposed in Rhino, but we definitely, you can do that in Ladybug Tools. You have all of that, or you can draw them as geometry if you want.
I was
So,
thinking, yeah, right, okay, yeah. Okay.
yeah, that louver thing is basically, that's what it does. You can just have as
Gotcha.
many as louvers you want on
Got
the
it.
window.
Okay.
And the blind material, the energy plus blind material is exposed in Rhino.
Is exposed in Rhino
So,
too, so
yeah,
okay, you can use
so you
blind
can create a
material too.
window construction that has a blind material, and that'll simulate much faster than all those little detailed geometries.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions here? I think like I covered everything about this room that I wanted. I mean, we talked solve adjacency, we talked validation, you know, the shades, you know, too much about shades right now at this point, maybe. Then you have all the rooms. So maybe it's a good time to tell you, like right now, there are usually people have different options. So one is the people who want to go outside Rhino. So if you want to go outside Rhino, then you have all these different options to save to. One is the IES-VE. We have IDEIs. You have GBXML, HVJSON. You can save it to a Radiance model if you want for daylighting. You can go to OpenStudio. You can go to IDF, and you have all those options, right? For exporting the model out. The other option that you have is you can go to Pollination and use Pollination to run different studies, right? I can go to projects here under, let's say, my demo project. And I'm not going to run anything right now, but under demo project, basically I can say, let's say, you know, plus, and then run any type of studies. Let's say annual daylight, you know, daylight factor, or annual energy use, anything that you want. All these recipes are available. The model will be linked to the model that you have inside Rhino. And then the other data are here for weather file. There are optional inputs for recipe. And if you use Ladybug Tools, this is the same recipe for Ladybug Tools. Ladybug Tools basically uses pollination recipes that are translated or exported to run locally. I mean, there was a full circle because they used to be Ladybug Tools first, then they become pollination recipes, and now go back that way. And then you can run the studies locally or on cloud. Like you have both options here too, right? So that's option 2. Option 3, for all the Ladybug Tools users, if you want to do parametric stuff, everything, you can go directly from here, type Grasshopper. You should not get this. This is specific to my machine, but then when you get Grasshopper, go inside Grasshopper. If you go to Pollination tab up here, when you install the Rhino plugin, you will get this additional serialize and parameters. I don't know what they call it, subcategories. And under parameters, there is one called PO model. Where is it? Here. Of course, you can always type PO model, right? And it comes up. And what this PO model component does is you can right click here, get model. And now it basically takes that pollination model from Rhino and gives you a Honeybee model in Grasshopper. So now if you have a script that basically works with Ladybug Tools, logics and everything, you can, with single component, you can bring all of those connected to your Ladybug Tools logic. And actually, when things are done, you can bake it back, go inside Rhino if you want. So it's like a two-way connection between Ladybug Tools and the Rhino plugin. I hope this also gives you an idea of like how they are interconnected. Any questions here? Maybe like I can use this as an example to add louvers, huh? I don't know. Oh, and I see the new one has very nice colors. Similar
Yep,
colors.
yep, we gotta match the Rhino plugin.
Right.
In the
That's
OpenStudio
cool.
color scheme.
So let's say 0.5 depth. And am I right that I can click? No, I can't. I have to connect rooms, right? I can't connect the whole model. So rooms. So this will give me what? New rooms with shades. So I can preview them here. So now you can see I have all these louvers here. Let me do a little bit more so it's a little bit more interesting. Let's do 4 of them. Right, just added all of this. And half a meter is too deep when you have so many of them. So, okay, now I added all this. So now I can create a new model. Here, right, adding these rooms that I have and just add all the shades that comes from the original model. So here is how it worked. Rhino, Ladybug Tools logic, recreating the model here. And now I can use the PO model component. Right click and bake the model and replace the existing model. Here we go. So now if I close this, you see like everything that I built in Rhino, in Grasshopper is now part of Rhino. Make sense? Oh, I'm sorry, Levent. I just, we don't do a good job in showing this stuff. Like, if you didn't know, that's my bad. Yes, like you can totally do this. You can do anything that you want parametrically to the model. And then with a single click, everything comes in. And I think these shades are added as aperture shades because that's how the plugin works. I think now that this shady stuff doesn't leave us alone, right? So now you get the concept of sometimes it's useful. So these are all added to that aperture. How do you know which type of shade was created inspection after the fact? Well, the easiest way to know it is here to see where it falls, right? It's under aperture. I think they are, let me see, when I select them, do I have different PO select? I think we have 2. We have one for shades that includes everything except for site context. And then we have another one that says PO cell site context. Technically, in the UI, we don't consider a huge difference between all the shades except for the context. They're all shades, generally speaking. Any questions here? So if there are no questions, now we're going to get to the interesting part of the workshop. In my opinion, I like that part a lot. For some reason, I don't know. So I'm going to save this. It's saved on Google Drive, and you can use it. So let's go ahead and open the second file that we had here, which called Revit sample model HVJSON. Yes.
Mustafa, before we move on, do you just want to just review quickly? Because now that we've covered all the
you're
5
right.
geometry objects,
Absolutely.
we
Yes.
have something
Thank you.
in our...
Yes. I think I get too excited about fixing models. I forget. So yeah, let's we just review this. So basically everything that we build and now the understanding, like the way it works, it comes from what we call HVJSON model, or sometimes we refer to it as Honeybee model objects. There are several type of objects, but you can see the relationship between them are nested. So on top you have room, and room is created of several faces, and faces can have door and apertures and shades. Shades are a little bit unique in this case because you can see shade can be part of the room, face, aperture, and door. And I think we talked about it like more than I usually talk about it in workshops, but that's good. By now, you know. So now you can have several rooms, and several rooms together create a model. That's when you have the model. The rest stays the same. So under rooms, you have faces, and faces can have doors and apertures. And of course, shades can be applied to model, room, face, or aperture. They have the freedom to be applied anywhere and everywhere. There are 5 golden rules of HVJSON geometry, and I think that's one of the beauties of this HVJSON model is if you follow these 5 rules, and I think that goes to the question of Abraham, like what are the things that I should take care of? The rest will work as expected. And I let Chris go through this, Chris to go through these 5 golden rules.
Yeah. So these are just the things you need to, if you're going to prepare your geometry for that add rooms or add shades command, just make sure that first everything is planar before you do that. And if you have stuff, we can show you methods of planarizing it, but everything has to be planar in the Honeybee model schema. The second one you don't really have to worry about in Rhino because Rhino doesn't really let you make self-intersecting B-refs, but you can find from some other geometry sources that you can sometimes get these bow tie shapes, so you can't have that. The next one is that I think you guys already pointed out, right? The apertures or doors need to be not just coplanar with the parent face, but they have to be completely within the boundary, so not touching the edge of it. So that's something just to keep in mind. The adjacent objects, right, to have valid solved adjacencies, right, they need to have matching areas, and the subfaces need to match between those two. And then lastly, as one that you guys already pointed out, all rooms have to be closed solids. So, right, so you just follow these 5 geometry rules. As long as you make sure that your input geometry is following these 5 rules, all the other idiosyncrasies of different building energy modeling platforms you don't have to worry about. You don't have to worry about counterclockwise vertices or the native tolerance of energy plus. All that we just take care of for you in your translators. And the validation that Mustafa showed you, that will tell you if any of these 5 golden rules are in violation, so that you can fix them and zoom into the different parts of the model and fix them. And so the pact is, right, as long as your model's valid, as long as you follow these 5 rules, right, you'll be able to send your model to any of the interfaces we connect to without errors or warnings. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Yes,
No problem.
that's basically moves us to our second exercise. Do you have any questions so far? No? Okay. If there are no questions here, let's go ahead and open the second one. And I think at some point I should give a break to everyone to just get some tea or coffee. Let's go for 15 more minutes, or like go up to 3:30 the time here, like in 13 minutes. Then we can have a break, and then we come back and do the next part. So if you go in the model, there is another model called one Revit sample model HVJSON. I'm going to copy it to in class so everyone can have access to it, and then I'm going to drag and drop it here and open the file. And it says, do you want to validate? Say no for now, and we are going to validate it later. So this is the famous Revit model. And like these are the cases that if you don't know, I'm just like, oh, all the roofs are missing. They're not missing because it's just a preview thing that I basically turned them off, right? I have to bring them back. And the more we show it, the more I think like we should have some visual indicators of what is off and on, so people know. But this is the famous Revit sample model. I have to be clear that this model has issues, but we have made these issues. It's not exported using the Pollination plugin. It's initially exported using the Pollination plugin, but we have made some issues in it to use it for teaching workshops, right? And this is what happen to you. Like whenever you have a model comes from Revit or someone gives you a model and you want to use it for simulation, there are some things that you can see. For example, I can see here there is a gap, right? And there will be more that you cannot see. So the approach here is you just use PO validate model on the model. The first thing that you do, you run PO validate. And now you can see when I do PO validate, it gives me an error here for invalid subface, what I can do, I can click on show, and it will show me where the error in my model is. So in this case, we have an aperture that's outside the wall, and this is what it says. It's clear, but again, if you don't know, you click on more info and you'll see it. One of the other things that I do, if you have a model and you get like a lot of them and you want to understand where the problem is, you can also use show parent. So it basically shows the room. So if you have a model like there are 10 floors, everything everywhere, just to show parent to give you an idea of like where in the model is you have the issue. Is it like only one side? Is it the whole model? So again, show parent to see the parent for this one for an aperture, or you can do show to see the object. Now you have this. I think last year, if you wanted to fix this, you had to go select this thing to make sure it's in not room selection. So you could select this aperture, then we would do move edge and all those, right? But for anything that is common, for all these common issues, we have commands that automatically fix them. And if we don't, you have to let us know. So we should add a command to automatically fix them, right? If there's something common. So for this one, the command that I'm going to use is PO offset child objects. So what it does, it basically, you just give it a room and it checks all the child objects. And if they're outside, it will offset them in for the value that you put here. So I have the 001 value here, and it will be 001 of a fit. So I have no idea how much is it, but it's small enough. Then I select the room and just press the space bar, and you saw the geometry is already fixed. Make sense? And this can, if you have a model with like several apertures all over the place, you just run it once, it just fixes it for all of them. So that was the first validation issue that we had to solve. The second validation issue is, I mean, that doesn't show up in validation, but the second error is like you have this gap here that you can visually see, right? So if I wouldn't use validation, I would have seen this after solving adjacency, because I would try to look at the model and find all the indoor faces, and I would see these two are not there, they're outdoor. But this is like obvious enough, we can totally see it, right? So to fix this, let me save the model first as a 3D file. To fix this one, there is a command called PO align in elevation. So we used to have a command called PO align, or maybe just PO align, and it was doing so many things. So now that command is broken down into PO align in elevation and PO align in plan. So it's clear in which direction you want to align. So I'm going to do PO align in elevation. Select geometries. I'm going to go in front view, or actually I can go to right view. One of the other things I'm going to do, I'm going to use PO cell shades, or sorry, I ran this command. I should have not run it. Let's exit out of it. I'm going to go to the right view, then I'm going to use PO cell shades and press Ctrl H to hide them. Whenever I show this, I have to tell people hiding and showing is not the best practice. You probably want to turn off the layer. But I wanted you to be aware of this option as a quick solution. Then the only thing I need to do, I need to draw a line here as the guide, a line or a point. So I just draw a line where the bottom of this floor is. And then I can do PO align in elevation, select all the rooms here. It says select point or lines that it needs to be aligned and give me a threshold. For threshold, I'm going to give 2 feet, which I think is 60 centimeters, should be enough. And then I'm going to select this line and press a space. And it just took all of those rooms and aligned them to this line that I have. Any questions? I don't know at this point how many of you are following, how many of you are so tired, especially people who joined from early morning. I hope like for anyone who is following or I don't know, only checking what I'm doing. If you have any questions, let me know. So this is basically all I needed to do to just align this. And now the two are matching. I have 6 more minutes to go before the break. And I already told you, so the next step is when you have your model, you do PO solve adjacency, right? So let me run PO validate model again to see if I messed up anything. No, things are correct. Now I'm going to run PO solve adjacency. And I make sure intersects is set to yes. So if faces are need to be intersected, they will be. And face match also set to yes. So it will match the faces that are adjacent and leave the rest to no for now. Here we go. So now that I ran this, you know what's the rest, right? I'm going to go quickly to color by boundary condition, and I go into filtering mode. And I first turn off all the roof ceilings, refresh. And anyone sees any glaring issues here?
One of the walls.
So the green wall at the intersection there, maybe I'm not seeing it right. Is that all the way green to the bottom? Like, shouldn't that be, or are they not matched in elevation? Okay.
No,
Oh, I
here,
see. Got it.
that's
Yeah,
correct, right? This is correct.
Yeah.
It should be, this is interior, that's actually not fully correct because this should be ground. So that's one of the errors. So these two are set to outdoors, not ground, right? Here and here. The
Right.
other one is this guy here, right? So this is set to out because there is a gap here because this room, as people do a lot of time when they extrude it with a little bit of like, it's not fully vertical. So you have a gap there that is causing this issue. So these are the two that we have to fix. So how do I fix it? The first thing that I do when I see these errors, I'm not going to move this right away. Why? Because I did solve adjacency, and because of doing solve adjacency, now if I isolate this, you will see that this face is intersected into two. So if I start like moving this around, I will get a lot of faces, like there will be like line-like faces. It will just make, I mean, we try to clean it up, but it's not good practice. So the first thing that you do when you see some error like this is use the command PO rebuild rooms. What PO rebuild rooms does, it does a few things that are useful. One of them is it merges all coplanar faces for you, and it also reset boundary conditions. So I'm going to set merge coplanar faces to yes, reset boundary condition to yes, and then for fixed aperture doors, I say to no because it's already fixed. And I'm not going to rebuild faces. Rebuild faces is useful when you get very strange models that the face is, you know, it's almost planar, but there is one vertex is out, and it's really hard to fix. You want to do rebuild faces. Usually you don't need to rebuild all the faces. So then I select all these rooms to rebuild. And now you'll see that everything is set to outdoors. These ones are set to ground correctly. This one, it was not able to figure it out for ground for now. And everything is here is joined. So if I select this face, there is no line there, right? So it's clean geometry. So what I can do, if I zoom in, I see actually here, there is also an issue. So the command for this is I can do move edge, right? And then I can select this, oops, select this edge and this edge. And maybe like to do it the better way to be like a good Rhino user, I'm going to move them one at a time because I don't know if the distance is the same. So I just move edge for that one, right? And then I run the command again, move edge for this one. And move edge is a Rhino command, right? Move edge is not a pollination command, but pollination works with move edge or supports move edge as one of the commands. And I think that's where things get interesting because we are using all the Rhino functionalities, which are great for geometry. And and mixing them with Ladybug Tools Power and Pollination, which is great for simulation. So now Rhino becomes a full-fledged simulation interface, right? So now that I did all that, let's save the model and do PO solve adjacency and run solve adjacency again. And things are looking fine, mostly, right? And then you can do PO validate model, and the model is valid. Are we happy with this? Any comments, questions? Chris, do you have anything to add before you go for the break?
Maybe there's something that's bugging me about this model, that the two floors are not totally aligned with each other. Maybe we might want to fix that.
Sure,
right. That's
we can fix that too. Should we do that when we come back, because it's 3:30? And I said we can do that. Yeah, I have a great model for fixing all these things not matching, but this is a good one to use also quickly. So it's 3:30. Let's have we have 1 hour and a half left, right? Am I right? So we can go up to 15 minutes, but if your 10 minutes is enough, I would like to go 10. Is it good for 10 minutes? Okay, so let's go up to 3:40. I mean, 9 minutes from now. I don't know what's the time zone there, but in Eastern time, like come back in 9 minutes, and then we continue. And I'll be around if you have any questions. And I'm going to pause the recording, and I will remember to continue.
I'll try and remember as well.
Okay, welcome back. If just where we were, like we checked all the errors that we saw. There was a validation error, there was a gap. We fixed this, we fixed that. Then we checked the model is valid. I forgot this one myself, so that's something that we still need to fix. So this should be ground. It's not right now. It's set to outdoor. And then Chris asked for fixing this thing of, these rooms, they don't exactly align, so we can fix them. So I'm going to fix this first, the easier one. I think this is one of the other differences between using Pollination Rhino versus using Ladybug Tools, that you have access to face level properties without the need to decompose and then put them back together. I can hold down Control Shift, and that will allow me to select this face, right? And then I can use Command PO edit face properties. And here I can change the boundary condition from outdoors to be ground, and then press OK. Oh, what happened? Preview thing. Interesting. So for some reason, it overwrote my, let me do it again. So PO, again, Control Shift. You can select the face. Control Shift, it allows you to select a face of a room. The command is PO edit face properties. And then here you can change the, where is it even? Here, from ground boundary condition to other. Let me see. I'm trying to recreate the bug if I can. No, so it worked. And then do PO edit face properties. Ground, okay. No. Okay, I don't know what was happening there, but basically you can edit the information in face level. If you don't like what I did in 3D, you can also do it in 2D. You can select the room, you can go face by face. Similar to other energy simulation software, a lot of people like this more. And then right click here and edit properties for that face. So this also works, but you can also select it from the 3D view. And might be a good time to tell you that I talked about editing the construction set modifier, everything in room for a room. You can also edit them in the face level, right? So you can change, let's say, the modifier for this to be something that it shouldn't be, like interior shade. Why I'm doing this? Because now I can use the, I can show you the face type, color by face type. I can color by, there should be a modifier, Radiance modifier. So now you can see everything is, generic ceiling, generic floor, all this. But this one down here is set to whatever I set it, interior shade, because I changed it to interior shade. Make sense to you? Like don't do that in real world. I'm just telling like you can edit things in face level if you want to overwrite the default ones. Okay. Any questions? No. Okay, if there are no questions, now I'm going to set this to shaded mode or ghosted mode so we can see some stuff. So one of the things is this room is not fully aligned, right? There is a distance here. We covered this morning in the workshop for Revit, but now you can also fix it in Rhino. So one thing that we have to think about is when you have this scenario, you can either align this to that, so I can move this line and bring it here, or I can align this first floor to the second floor. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to align first floor to the second floor. Why? Because if I do it for the second floor, then I have to make sure I split this face. Otherwise, when I move this face, this will become a non-planar face, the roof of this room. Again, this is a particular case, but you basically have to think about this kind of logics when you want to do alignment. If everything extruded, then life is easier. But if you have non-extruded, then you want to make sure when you move things around, it doesn't make the faces non-planar. In many cases, we try to mesh them for you if it becomes non-planar so you can continue working, but it's not good. Like you want to keep the model clean as possible. So what I need to do, I basically need to draw a line here. So I'm going to draw a line from here. I hold down shift and I go all the way, right? This is one line. And maybe I also want to align this one to this. So I'm going to also draw another line here. And don't worry, I have like so much alignment for you to do. So this is another one that I'm going to draw. So I have one here, which I drew here, and the other one is here. Where did I put it in? Oh, sorry. My bad. That's not clean. So all really matters is how it looks like in plan. I can do it like this, hold down shift, it should be fine. So if I go to plan view or top view, you can see these two lines, right? I press F7, so I don't see that. So this is one line and this is another line. Why do I draw these lines? Because similar to PO align in elevation, we have a command for PO align in plan, right? What I'm going to do, I'm going just to select everything in second level, and I'm going to use this menu here to just show you some of the things that you can do here. So one of the things that you can do, you can basically sort. If you click on that top, you can sort based on the values in every column. So I can sort by story. These are all in level 1, right? And these are everything in level 2. So in this case, I'm going to come here and press Control H to hide everything in level 2, right? So I only have things that are in level 1. Then I'm going to go in top view. You can do it from perspective too. I'm just going to top view because it's easier to select. And I can do PO align in plan, select geometries. I'm going to select all of them. Then similar, it wants me to select the grid lines. You can select multiple grid lines, but I do usually horizontal ones first and the vertical ones second. And interesting how many mistakes I have made after the break. So I don't know why. Let me hold down shift. Hopefully you're doing better than I doing. So, okay, so these are the two lines that I really want, right? So I do PO align in plan, select geometries. I select all the geometries. And then it says, what's the threshold? I put 1 feet here because I don't think anything is further than 1 feet. And then I'm going to select this line and press the space bar, and something is, it says the chicken will be, the kitchen will be, I need some tea. Give me 1 second.
Is there, well, I can explain maybe what we should have done. So, I mean,
Yeah.
because we had all these solved adjacencies, right?
Oh, I
before we
forgot.
did this, right? The fact that we
Thank you,
aligned
Chris.
and moved all this stuff around has messed everything up. So good
Thank
practice
you.
before doing aligning is to use that
Absolutely.
rebuild rooms command
Yeah,
again.
like my bad. Like good that I forgot. So you see like what's the problem. So before doing that, you have to rebuild. So all that's basically what I said myself and I forgot. Thank you, Chris. Yes,
Yep.
so you do PO rebuild to make sure it merges all the coplanar faces and remove the boundary condition. And this is one of the other things that you have to get used to. It's not like IES that you move a stuff and the solve adjacency is just calculated automatically, right? You control that. So when you move a stuff, the adjacency is not there anymore. You have to redo that. You have to reset the adjacency and re-implement it. So, okay, now I can go here and let me go these shades, turn it off. Let me go here and hide this. Let me go to top view and do PO align in plan, select geometries, and 1 is good. Select this line, and here you go. Now it worked as expected. I do the same here, PO align in plan. This time I only select this room, keep it at 1, select this one, and align. And now if I go in perspective and do show, you should see that everything is aligned, except that did I drew this line in the wrong place? I think I did. This is the second floor. That's a user error, not a software error. So move project here. I'm going to move this from here to here. I'm going to go back here in perspective, select everything and hide. And then I'm going to go back top again to PO align in plan. Select this geometry, this one, and select this new line that I drew. And things should work fine now. So let's save, show everything, go back in perspective, and now everything should be aligned and cleaned up as expected. Right? I hope the things that I did, basically my mistakes didn't confuse you, but the whole concept is basically you do those alignment plan and it aligns to them. And then the first thing you do afterwards is you do PO validate model again, because you can make invalid ones as I did here. And that's why I ran this. So now you can see the thing that happens is I have invalid surface. And if I go, you will see that this is now slightly out because I align on one end, right? And there is another one on the other end, which has the same issue. Make sense? So there's one here, one there. And by now you should know, how do you fix this? Anyone remembers? No? The command was PO offset child objects, select and run, and it fixes all the child objects, including those two. So now if I do PO validate model, things should be valid before solve adjacency. And now I do PO solve adjacency. and I do PO validate model again, and the model is valid. Questions here? Did the overall workflow make sense? Maybe I do this. And this is the one that is still, again, like it's reset to outdoors. So every time that I do this, I have to go reset this, which is painful. Hopefully we'll fix it sooner than later with that concept of, or we make it easier sooner than later. Why? Which one is this one? Okay. Oh. So this is a good model now that I can trust. Questions?
And almost a comparison, I think, from what we did early in the Revit version of it. So in Revit, I guess the gaps appear between rooms when we have the separator lines. And when we remove it, the rooms kind of just combine and then that wall is created, right? So that gaps don't really appear in the Revit version of it, right? As opposed to in the Rhino, then we have to go through that whole process that you just did. Is that?
Well, it depends on the model. And then we design that process to be like this more than it's really like that. It will be different Revit model by model. You cannot say like generally speaking in Revit versus Rhino. One thing is for alignment, you can do much more in Rhino than Revit. The next model that I'm going to use is all about doing alignments. So I think like let's do that and see like if that answers your question, or if not, like we can get back to the topic.
No, yeah, I was just wondering, like it almost looks like both Revit and Rhino has plus minuses, and it's probably good to even work within like both, like export it from Revit, clean it up in Rhino, and go back again and stuff like that.
Yes, I mean like my approach is to get a workable model from Revit, make it simulatable in Rhino.
Yeah.
But again, like as I said this morning, our goal is to get the Revit plugin as close as possible. So if it's like not crazy models or everything is extruded, you should have the option to run everything from Revit too. But of course, Rhino with Grasshopper gives you a lot more flexibility than what you can do in Revit. Any other questions? If there are no other questions now, like things are going to get interesting. So I have here additional sample models, and there are different things that we can do. We can talk about curved walls, that's one, but I'm going to use this one first. This is a real hospital model that I have removed all the room names and I just removed a lot of rooms. So it has changed. It's not, you won't be able to identify it. But at the same time, this is like still shows you some of the issues that can come from a Revit export when people don't spend enough time to fix things in Revit. If you go ahead and open that HV.json file, if you're still following along, even when I said don't do validation, it shows me a lot of tiny edges. So let me go here, just get my filtering thing to be normal, refresh. Close, and I do color by type. So this is a real world scenario, right? That was like Revit sample model. We tried to make things fail for you. So we have something. This is what you really get if you export something from Revit. And in this case, they didn't spend the time, for example, to make the columns to be not room bounding, or really what it was around every column, there was like a small interior wall around it. So it wouldn't see the column in any case, you end up with this as you get. And now I'm going to show you how to fix this if you are up for it. So one question that I have, because I don't see your screens and I don't see your faces, anyone here is trying to follow along, or should I just go and do it? It just changes the style that I'm going to do to deal with it. My understanding is probably no one at this point is following along for everything, but so I'll do it based on the idea of you're watching, and if you're following and you want me to sub, let me know at any point, okay? So as I said, the first thing that I would do for a case like this is you run the PO validate command. So I run this PO validate, and it is finding some rooms that collide, so I can just select them and show. So for example, this is 2 of them. You see that this is a small thing here. This is another one. These 2 are colliding. This is also another small happiness. And this one is this triangle comes inside this. So again, for daylight model, maybe this is just totally fine. For an energy model, not fine. You want to fix that, right? The other one is we have non-solid geometry, a few of them. So if I press on show, there are issues here. It says like there is one non-manifold edges somewhere in this, and we have more of this here. And then the other error that we have here, there is an overlapping subface error. So if I check this, for some reason, they have been 2 faces on top of each other. This is how it has been exported, right? So first thing that I'm going to do, I'm not going to deal with any of these non-solid things or colliding rooms first, because what I know is this model has a lot of these small things that I have to remove, small gaps, right? And I have to do a lot of alignments, which can also cause issues. So I'll don't think about them. I'll just try to do alignment first. And then as I'm doing that, I'll go back and then check if there are any intersections that still left between the rooms. But one thing I'm going to fix is this one, because this is very easy to fix. So the way to fix this, there are 2 on top of each other. We know we only want 1, so I'm just going to click on this, go outside the room, basically turn off the room selection mode, select 1 aperture and delete it. And that's it. And then put this back up. So one of the issues resolved, right? One other thing that I want you to note here, so let me save this, is you see some of this notes here, right? If I basically sort them by notes twice, there are several rooms here that have some notes for me. And if I right click here and do show notes, it tells me they have tiny edges. So if I click here and do this, you'll see there are very tiny edges created because of how the geometries are, right, between this and this. Now you see these 2 are not exactly matching. You wouldn't be able to see this normally if you wanted to just see the model yourself. But these are the things that can cause issues, right, when you model. So the first command that can be helpful here is you do PO rebuild rooms. And remember, merge coplanar is set to yes. So it will merge all of those small things, as many as possible. And my hope is many of this will go away after I just do the rebuild.
And that should also address a lot of those non-manifold
Right.
edges, probably, because they were probably those tiny edges that were causing it to read as non-solid.
Yes, most of them are still solved, but for example, this one didn't, right? So I can basically use this, and this is another thing that I wanted to show. So you can select from here and do isolate with adjacency or isolate to quickly get the room that you want, right? And then here I can say show notes, and this one has a tiny edge again, but this is because this thing, right? And it couldn't solve this. It just, this wall has like a small thing going inside. and it's only on one side. So it couldn't fix this because these two are not exactly planar to be merged. But don't worry about that. We'll get that fixed. So now I do show. And the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to use the one that I already showed you. Basically try to align all these things in plan. But this time, instead of drawing every single line, which is kind of painful, I use this command called gen align grids. So what it does, you can select all this, and then it tries to figure out where are the places that the lines should be, and it just draws them for you, right? And you can keep the percentage that you want to keep. So you can keep more or less if you want, right? There is a grid underneath that this thing is generated based on that. So this is in meters. So I can say, you know, do it for a grid size of 10 centimeters. And based on that, it basically puts a grid that I can make it visible here, right? And then tries to figure out which are the ones that I really want to keep. So I usually use this to just quickly generate the lines that make sense. So these are for the vertical ones, right? I can bake them. And then I reset the direction here. And let me say, I have to use like a line as the base. So I'm going to use this as the base. And now it will generate the horizontal ones for me, right? So I'm going to say, okay, keep them to bake. And then I'm going to close this. So one of the good things that Rhino plugin offers, unlike Revit, is because we have access to geometry and we can select room by room or line by line, we have a lot more freedom. So I can quickly come here and say, you know what, these two lines are just too much. I just want this. You know, this is also too much. I just want this.
Can you really quickly
Go on.
go back to how you added those grids?
Can you say it again?
Can you just really quickly show again what button you clicked to add those grids?
These lines?
Yeah.
So the command is PO, I just deleted that. The command is PO gen align grids. I don't think we have a button for it, but that's the command. What it does, you can select geometries that you're interested in, and it can be partial. So just to show you, I can select only rooms here, for example, and then it will try to generate those lines. So I can reset this and reset the direction of the lines. And now you can see now the new lines that are suggested. I can also change this to like how many, what's the percentage of the lines that I want to keep. Make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, no problem. Okay, so let me keep some of them here. Take and close. And for example, this one, obviously I don't want it to be here. I want it to be here. So I can do a few interesting things here, right? So I can use the command that you should know by now. And this is just too many lines here. I'm going to delete all of this. I don't need them. This one I don't need. I'll keep these two, which is a hallway. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to delete this. And I'm going to delete this. So what I'm going to do, I can do PO align in plan, which is something that we already used, right? I can select all these rooms here. As an example, threshold is, it should be, let's say 1.5 meters is good enough. And then I can select this line and you'll see all of this are now aligned. Maybe I color this so you can see them easily. Makes sense? I can do the same here and I can do PO align in plan and select all these rooms here and select this line here. And this should align all of this. But at some point, even if you like doing this as much as I do, you get tired of like drawing all this line and selecting all this, right? So you want to do it faster. Then there is another command that can help you. Let me pick this side, right? So the other command that you have is called PO remove short segments. What this one does, it basically takes an input, a selection of rooms. Let me select all of up to here. And then you give it a threshold. So here is by default is 1 meter, right? And now you can see all of this are already fixed. So let me put it like 20 centimeters, you see, like, so if it's 20 centimeters, it's keeping everything. If I go for half a meter, most of them are fixed. Here we see some weirdness on, like, some of them are removed. So this one is removed, that one is kept. So if I do 1 meter for this, it looks like this is something that we really want and it works. So now I can apply and all of them are fixed using this second command. So the first one was PO align in plan. The second one was PO remove short segments. There is another one, third one. I think actually, Victor, you asked for this at some point. I might be wrong, but if you did, we implemented. So the thing is, the other one is you have, and Revit does a good job on that, right? You can align object to existing objects. So let's say we have a hallway here, right? This one. And you usually want all the rooms around it just to be aligned to this. So the command for that is PO align to room. So you can select one target room. In this case, I'm going to select this room. And then you can select all the rooms that you want to be aligned to it. So I'm going to hold down Shift and select all these rooms. And it's similar, you can get a threshold. I'll do 1 meter. And I'll talk about those options later because it will happen here. But now you'll see that all those rooms that I had are already aligned to these rooms that I have here. Make sense? Any questions so far? Yes, no, maybe? Okay, I assume there are no questions. So between these 3 commands that I just told you, you should be able to clean almost any plan that you get with any issues. And I think the hardest part sometimes, at least for myself, is to make decision which command should I use. But you know, like for the edges of the building, usually the quickest one is PO align in plan, right? So for this one, for example, I can do PO align in plan, select all geometries, within 1.5. 1.5 is too much. Let's do 1 meter, select that, and then it works. For the ones around the hallways, like this one, the command that I use usually is PO align to room, because I can use the room as the base, right? So I can select this room here and then align this and this to it. Again, the threshold 1 makes sense, but this one actually didn't work as expected because this edge was close enough. It just moved all the way here. So if you get cases like this, you know, what you can do always is you can use, you can use move edge and move face to fix them. So I'm going actually to hide this one too, Control H. I can do move edge, and then I'm going to move this edge here so I can access it better. Show everything back, and I don't remember what it was supposed to be, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do move edge. And this is now the other commands that I would use, right? Move edge and move face to fix all this stuff. So there is another edge here. I'm going to move this here. I remember there was an issue here with this thing, right? I'm going to do another move edge to move this here, and one more move edge to move this here. So that's the part that I fixed. Save. Let me now talk about the corner thing if it happens here. For this one, again, I'm going to do align to room, right? Target room is this. This is the room that I want to be aligned to, and the threshold can be 2. And this is also actually fixed. Does it make sense so far? Like how you would approach this? Is there any issue with alignment commands and perimeter glazing or alignment of non-ortho rooms? No, perimeter glazing gets adjusted as you align them, as you move them. If there are glazing inside, they will be offset to the new room that you have, and that's the one that I actually used in the sample model. For the other one, it should also fix it, but if it doesn't, there is another command that helps you. Let me try it here. So let me have this line here, right? PO align in plan, select geometries, right? Select this line, and you have to make sure angle tolerance is -1. It means like, I don't care about angle if angle changes after alignment, otherwise it will limit it to that angle. And the threshold, I do like 1.5. It didn't work, generate geometry. Let me say, okay. So PO, is it because this is next to the edge? Let me try again. PO align in plan, select geometry, select grid line. No, this one doesn't work. And snap to grid failed to create solid BRAP. For some reason, it doesn't do it. Technically, it should work. So maybe it's because it has this additional thing. Because if I do this, which is the same thing under the hood, if I do move edge, you see the aperture stays there, but then I can do PO project child to host, and it will fix it. That's the command that I wanted to show. Even if you do something and the child is outside, it should bring it back. But for this one, I was expecting it to do it automatically. So I just report this as a bug because it should work. But still, you can use move edge to solve that one. Good one. Any other comments or questions that you want me to cover? I mean, I can continue doing like cleaning up this 100%, or I can, oh, sorry. That's my alarm to pick up my son. Someone else will pick him up, don't worry. So for today. I totally forgot about it, but do you have any other questions? Here, does the overall process make sense? Okay, good. So if it does, I want to show you something that came up during the previous workshop that we basically did with this model, or a model similar to this. Was the question that came up was, okay, we do all this stuff, but how do we know what is the area change between the two? Let me actually fix this one too, so it will be more colorful. You align in plan, select geometries. So that should work fine. So the good thing is, for something like that, because we have the ability to use Grasshopper, you can put a quick Grasshopper script to do that, or you can write an app. So during that workshop, just to show you another use case of using Grasshopper, is we basically have a definition here, open document, Rhino, additional sample, area difference, native GH. This is taking its time to load. But once it loads, I can load the first one that we had, right? The original file. So I'm going to select one from existing one, New York. It was hospital thing 01. Okay. So that's the first one. And then I'm going to link the existing model from Rhino into Grasshopper. Where is it? Get model. So now this basically creates a graphic, 3D graphic for me here, right? That I can see what is the difference of the area. So which are the ones that the area has changed a lot. And then there is a wireframe that shows what it used to be and what it is right now, right? So you can quickly do a judgment call of like, this makes sense or not. You can, of course, export this as a CSV somewhere to do a quick check. So for your energy models, even after you do all these changes, you have this option of like coming back and checking and see what is the threshold of the changes that you have made in the geometry. Any questions about this? No, okay. So now I have two options from here. We have more than 30 minutes left. I can do, I don't know, we can run some studies from inside Rhino using pollination if you want to see those kind of workflows. Or we can do one more alignment problem, which is harder than this, which is like two curved walls that needs to be matched. I think we can even do both, do the curved wall first, and then which one was the former? Or running some studies? Okay, I can totally do that. Looks, anyone else has any preference? No, okay. So let me run some studies and show it to you. I think I'll do the other one first, the one for running simulation, and then I'll get back if we have time. We do that alignment one. So let me bring back the Revit model, which is a smaller, so we can do more. Revit sample model. Open. So this model, and then I can basically what I'm going to try, I'm going to set it up and run one daylight model and one energy model, right? So we can basically see how it works. Or maybe when I run daylight model, you will also already see how it works for energy too. For daylight, the good thing is we can visualize all the results back, which is very interesting. For energy, we still have to have that step that you can bring the end results back without using Grasshopper. One thing actually that I want to show you, because I ran it this morning for doing some debugging, the geometry complexity, this is one of the projects that we are helping company. They're trying to build, I don't know exactly, zero energy yacht, right? And they wanted to make an energy model out of this yacht. And they tried different solutions, but with the use of Rhino plugin, we were basically able to build the whole yacht and as a valid energy model that you can run in the Energy Plus. So you can go as far as this, and this one has all the program types, all the adjacencies, every single construction, face space, you know, everything that you can imagine that you put in a full energy model, and everything is prepared inside the Rhino plugin. And of course, you can bring it into Grasshopper that you want. But I think my point here being is like for geometry, it's kind of the Rhino plugin should solve most of the geometry limitations that we ever had. And if whatever we wanted to build to work to be able to run energy simulation with. But now, if I want to run the daylight study inside this, the first thing that I need to do is to add some sensor grids. So PO add sensor grids is the command that adds sensor grids. It needs to select grid size offset, and it is in feet because my document is in feet. I'm going to turn off the layer for apertures. I saw a case that it just added the to apertures and doors. And then I'm going to select all the rooms. And now it creates all these sensor grids for me based on that size that I gave it. If you go here in the control panel, all my grids, the sensor grids are named after the rooms. So whatever room you have there, right? It will get the same name here for sensor grids. And you can see they even have the room ID. This room ID is useful when you run something like lead studies or you have dynamic apertures inside. But otherwise, you don't need really room ID. So it exactly knows which room this sensor grid comes from. So it knows what are the different ways that it can see the light, right? So now the model is ready. Let me go back here and turn on layers. All I need to do is to go to a project. So far we have been using this Rhino panel. There is another panel, which is, we call it pollination panel. The command is PO panel. When you run PO panel, it basically gives you access to the pollination website, right? And there are apps here that we didn't talk about because they're beta and we're still working on them. And we will have some early study apps like SunPath, Direct, SunAvers, all those things that people loved about Ladybug Tools accessible without using anything from Grasshopper. But the other thing is I can go to any of the projects that I have, right? Under projects, I can, let me go to a Ladybug Tools project. I don't know how much compute I have left, but I can go here. Or you know what? We made a workshops organization for this, for all the workshops. So I can go to workshops, and then I can basically go to this demo project. And I can start a new study by clicking on this plus, selecting the recipe. So I'm going to select annual daylight in this case. And then annual daylight basic sample model comes here. For get geometry, I just click on get model and it will load the whole model for me. If you want to only take part of the model, then you can select on this selection, and then that will allow you to select part of the model. So now I do this, I do get model, it says select pollination object to send. So I can only select this room, right? And if I want to check which part is selected, I can use this eye. So this eye now shows me there is only, this room is the only one that's selected. Let me go to wireframe view, so it's cleaner, right? Usually for daylight model, you want to select everything, right? So I'm going to click get model again, and now it selects everything that I have in the model. For weather file, I should have weather files in this project. I'm going to select this. If you want, you can change it local and select any file that you have locally, right? That will be uploaded to this project. So for now, I'm going to select the one from cloud. And then finally, that I have this, I can submit the simulation to run on cloud. I'm going to do this so you can all see how it's running on the cloud. I can also switch to local and run the same simulation locally if I want. It's very similar to the one that we showed you in Revit, basically, for the ones in the morning. Basically, it's the same UI, everything. The only difference is when you do get model, the model in Rhino is there, so it will be linked right away. For the other one, you basically had to get the model again from Revit. Makes sense so far? Do you have any questions?
Just a quick one. So,
Sure.
I think there were like 3 different daylight recipes in the app. What are the differences between those 3?
So the 3 that I had in this project are different versions of the. So if I start doing one, so this is the latest version. These are the 2 versions that I have used before. These are a static version. So this is version 0913. When you see this star, it means it's latest.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, we are also changing this. This is one of the parts that I really dislike because I think there are like too many steps to set up the new study. So the new one that we are changing to, you will see the recipes there. So you just click on the recipe. It's very similar to how you do it in Ladybug Tools. I can probably even show you that if you want while the simulation is running. Is there any other questions for me? Give me 1 second for anyone who is going to watch this in the near future.
You mentioned for cloud computing, you may not have enough or something like that. Just can you do a reminder on how much is available for free, how much you have to pay for, what's limits?
Sure. So if you go to your under subscriptions, you get 3 hours per month. So I use 3 hours, 34 minutes. How in Rhino to run locally? So yes, you can check everything, Victor, under subscription here. Subscription. If I go to Ladybug Tools, I have that left. I'll show you how to run things locally in a second, Abraham. So for Ladybug Tools, we have a lot compute hours that we haven't used. So that's why I did. Okay, how to run the simulation locally? Good question. Let me go back to Ladybug Tools projects here. Demo. and see if this is done. So, okay, the simulation is already done, right? This is not the one that I just ran, is it? 1242. Oh, I ran it under not Ladybug Tools. I ran it under workshops. Sorry, workshops, projects, demo. I was like, why it took that long to run? Yeah, 2 minutes. So this is the one that I just ran. I can come here now, and you all can go also and see it on the web, or anyone you want to share with. Here we go, right? So the things that I have here, all the inputs are here. So even if I didn't have this model anymore, and I wanted to see what was the input model, I could click here and see it on the web. I could click here and see it inside Rhino, right, as a preview. But now I'm in the same model. I can go here in results, and you can see results here. There are different results. Useful daylight illuminance is by default. Again, similarly, I sent you a link on the web. So if you check this page on the web, you can click on this visualization, and you can see all these results on the web. But you know what we really want is we want it to be inside Rhino, right? So to do it inside Rhino, I just click on this, useful daylight, and you'll see the preview just shows the result inside Rhino. Keep in mind, right now, because I'm on preview, it's only a preview. So I can check between useful daylight illuminance and go to something else. So let's say continuous daylight autonomy, right? So this is continuous daylight autonomy, or I can go and check the daylight autonomy itself. Of course, you can see daylight autonomy here is much higher. If I go to useful daylight illuminance, we will see that these areas are going to be lower because we will get over 2000 very frequently, right? Close to window, we have so many windows. So now if I want this result to be part of the Rhino model, I can change this from preview to add and add them to Rhino. So what happens here, if I go outside this, right? If I'll just move, these results are now saved in my Rhino file as this object, which I always forget the name. What did we call this? Analysis mesh, I think we called it. So the reason this is good, because now this is like a geometry, right? Inside Rhino, and they are like all baked on different layers here, which means you can do a lot of customization. So you can basically check this and access all the legend parameters that you want and change them, make sure like they are set to what you really want them to be set, right? Put it whatever you want. You can change all the colors, everything. So this means if someone else opens this model, excuse me, and they have the Revit plugin, then they will see it the same way that you see it. If they don't have the Revit plugin, they see it as a colored mesh. Make sense? So far, I hope it does. Then what you can do here is similar that how we could take the model to Grasshopper, you can also take the results to Grasshopper. For example, if I want to know what's the average value, average daylight factor, or average annual value. So one thing is actually in the recipe, we give you that value. So you can see it here on the platform here. So let me, because this is one thing that we added to recipes recently. So if I go here to this, a specific run, there is one output here that says grid summary. So if you click on this grid summary, it gives you all those average values for each grid, right? This is a CSV file you can download and you can check. It has, you know, UDI, maximum, minimum, average, all those stuff. So this is all the thing that you want. But let's say you want to do it inside Grasshopper, then you can basically link this object to Grasshopper too. The object is here. No, not this one. This one, it's called the visualization set. So I can right click and set one analysis mesh. And you see like our naming is not really consistent here. We call it visualization set, we call it analysis mesh. So that's something that we have to fix on our end. But now the whole thing from Rhino is accessible in Grasshopper. which means if you want, for example, get all the values and everything, Ladybug has components for the construct visualization set. So you can get all the data for that visualization set and everything. So that's another workflow that I wanted to show you. So the things that I showed you was you can set up the study and run it on cloud. I remember I have to show you how to run it locally. You can also preview all the results on the web or preview it inside Rhino. 3, you can bake it inside Rhino. And 4, you can link those results that are inside Rhino to Grasshopper to do additional post-processing. The other thing that you can do is you can actually run the studies locally. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to this project. And you'll see here, I have this dropdown is the studies, but there is another dropdown for all the local studies. So for this project, I have run a local study before, but let's go and run another one. So I click on plus here. This time let's run daylight factor. I don't have daylight factor, right? This is a good opportunity for me to show you. So when you have a project, you should add these recipes to them before using them. So I go here in settings, recipes, and add daylight factor. And this is the item that I said we are improving, so it will be easier to do it later. So by default, it basically has any, which means that you will get the latest. So I'll just add that daylight factor here to project. And I go back to local studies and try to create a new study. And now I should see daylight factor as an available recipe. And this will be daylight factor study running locally. Double L for locally. And you can add more description if you want. The get model is the same. I just get model, right? And now I can run it locally. And for local, I can say how many CPUs I want to use. Let's say 6 here. I can set the local run folder that I want, if I want. And then I can create a study. And this time it creates the study locally, right? So the overall workflow is exactly the same. It just run it locally. You see this local thing here. Of course, the difference is you cannot see this one. I cannot share it with you because it's only on this machine. But if you use Pollination for running your studies, you can basically keep track of all the local studies, similar to how you keep track of running the simulations on cloud. There's a question here for daylight analysis purposes. We do not need model to be valid. No, you still need the model to be valid. You don't need to be valid for an energy simulation, right? So let's say you have some adjacent faces that have different construction. For daylight, doesn't matter. But if you have an aperture which is outside the base wall, then that's something that you want to make sure you fix before running the study. So now the daylight factor study is done. I ran it locally. You saw that nothing popped up, right? The reason nothing popped up because in my settings here, I say to run the local studies in silent mode. You can change it to be not silent. Then you see that batch file that pops up when you run it with Ladybug Tools. So that's one thing for you to know. That's here in these settings. But now let me go to Rhino, turn off this layer, go back to the study that I did, and visualize this daylight factor results. So that this is now a local run. But the whole user interface, the whole workflow, it's similar to what you run when you run it on the cloud. Question from Victor. Cloud, typically this is 3 hours per user per month, not shared pool resources for organization. Yes, that's correct. This is only for one single user. And all the projects needs to be public. When you run it on the cloud, under a personal account, everything is public. Masume, do you have a question?
Yes. So I wanted to ask about daylight simulation purpose. In case that I want to do some daylight simulation, do I need to model room by room, or is it fine if I just made the exterior skin as a big room, and then as an interior walls, I put just some vertical surfaces as shading?
Yes, you can totally do that.
And then for the lead purpose, so if I do the, if I wanted to specify the regular spaces, regular useless spaces, and I wanted to just make grid on those surfaces, do I need to just make a horizontal surface and make them points, sensor points on those surfaces?
Right.
Does it have
So
area?
good question. So the first one, yes, you can totally build it face by face. You don't need rooms for typical daylight simulation. For most of daylight simulation, you don't need that. For lead, you will need them to be room-based. The reason you will need them to be room-based is because for lead, you have to run, okay, I should say for lead option 1, you need them to be room-based because we have to do that post-processing calculation for all the dynamic blinds. And because of that, we need to know which sensor grid is part of what room. So if you want to basically to only run for common spaces, for example, for this shaft, you don't want it to be included in the in daylight study, you just remove the sensor grid from that area. So anything that has a sensor grid for that room will be calculated. Otherwise, you just remove the sensor grid and that space will not be included.
It means that when I wanted to select the rooms that I want to make the sensor points, I don't need to just select that space.
Yeah, just don't select it. Right, exactly.
Okay.
So let me just do this. Let's say PO cell sensor grids, right? Let me delete all the sensor grids that I had in this model. And then we can go here and I can select everything. And then I can say, you know, I don't know what happened with this. So select everything. This is now like out of sync. But for example, you do not need the bathroom or I don't know, whatever, like, or this shaft here, right? To be selected. Let me do this shaded, it's easier. So for example, this room, you don't need to, right? Be selected. Whatever I don't need to be selected, I can just remove those rooms like the bath. I don't want it to be included. And then when I do PO add sensor grids, you can basically select these rooms and it will add the sensor grid to those rooms. And you see now it added to the apertures too that I have to delete. But hopefully it's clear what I mean.
Yes, it is.
Does it make
Thank
sense? Yeah, like I'm declining here. Otherwise, you don't need to hide the rooms not to select them, of course, in Rhino. You can just deselect them. But
It's a good thing.
yes,
I didn't know that for lead purpose, I needed to have the room by room.
yes, for again, lead option 1, right?
Yes, yes.
For option 2, you don't need to because lead option 1, when we want to run that direct sunlight, annual direct sunlight logic, we need to know these apertures are related to that. That's why. Good question. No problem. Any other questions? What are options to share results from local runs? Any HTML options? You can do that. So if you run something locally, so I ran this locally, this visualization, you can just click here. And this is the HTML file. So it opened right here. Yes. So it doesn't matter if you run it locally or you run it on cloud. You can always, if there is any visualization object, you can always export it as an HTML, a standalone HTML, and share it. Again, this is very like this is kind of like our what's called our strategy that you should always be able to take whatever you want out of Pollination or bring it inside as much as possible. So yes, you have the option to create this HTML from here. And I think that's the beauty of running it inside the panel because you basically use this exact same user interface for local versus cloud. And I have said this before, I don't know how likely we are doing it for us to do it. Not that many people ask for. But one of the options that we have is really we can go and have an option to say, settings and then upload results to Pollination. So you can basically run locally and then just upload the results to Pollination if you want to share that local run on Pollination as a collaboration kind of or coordination, let's say, processes. That's also a possibility, but again, there hasn't been enough request for it. My understanding from the industry is, for the most part, the idea of collaboration for energy modeling or daylight modeling is not there. Usually there are like 1 or 2 people, mostly one person responsible for one model. But there is a lot that you can do for coordination that I think like still makes sense to put things on the web, right? You don't collaborate on the same model, but you want to coordinate to make sure everyone has access to your results, for example. They know where to go to download it. Or you want to send to someone and say, hey, check this and see if the results make sense. So that's where like Pollination can be really helpful for having those. And of course, for me, it's like, you run something and the customer comes back in a year and say, do you remember that study thing? Can we change that thing and rewrite again? And you're like, oh my God, I don't know where the files were. Now you know where they are. You just go to that project. All the runs that you have done are there. You can just basically get them. And one thing that I didn't show, you can even do something like this. Save the changes, no. So this morning we ran a study from inside Revit, right, under this project. It was a study here that came from Revit. And then I talked about how we have limitations in Revit and we cannot adjust all the the legend correctly. And because of that, we're not really happy about it. But what you can do, you can actually go and load the project that you ran from Revit, because we don't care what was the source. Like you can initiate it from Revit, from web, from Rhino, they're the same. You can basically come back here and add this model back into Rhino. So all the model that I basically created this morning for that Revit model, I can bring it into Rhino, right? Let me turn off this small thing there so it doesn't distract anyone. But then I can also go here and visualize the result that we had. It might take a couple of seconds for this. Let's see. Yep, here we go. Inside Rhino, I can even come and bake all those results inside Rhino, right? So I ran the study in Revit. I initiated it in Revit, or someone can initiate it from web. I can bring it in Rhino and do all the, things that I want to do for visualization, to customize it, do everything until we get Revit to behave correctly. You can basically manage all of those by bringing the thing that you started from Rhino to Revit. So now I'm done. Basically, I'm disconnected from what was on the web, right? Everything is local here. So PO cell sensor grids, height, and these are all the results. And again, similar to the other one, like all the results are here under different layers. I can go here and do whatever I want. I can change this to EQuest colors, preview. Okay. And then now I have them in eQuest, like this thing available in Rhino, so I can do all the Rhino thing that I want with the same thing that I started running from Revit. So this Pollination web interface sits there in the middle of all this. It's like a hub that you can send data, receive data, and do all the things that I talked about. Again, I think it will take some time for the industry to catch up with this. We're still seeing mostly like 1% setting up model running it. We see a little bit of people running it on cloud so other people can see what's happening. But we have yet to see like a full workflow like this to be done in a scale by many offices. As usual, like when it happens, sometimes I think like we don't market it well, or we don't have enough material for people to see. But at the same time, the way we work in the industry is also like very now still like it needs a change of mindset. It takes some time to happen, but the whole infrastructure is there and it works. Any other questions?
I have a quick question. So it's more about the geometry maybe. So for the projects that we don't have north, I mean cardinal orientation windows, if I wanted to go with the window to wall ratios and the orientation is like northeast, in that case, can I do it with pollination to just make some windows on that specific orientation?
So I do not know really the answer to this question. So at apertures by window to wall ratio. So yeah, I see that they are pretty much fixed here in what is north. No, but I think this is a very good feature request to talk. I mean, right now the solution is to bring it to Grasshopper, add it, and then replace the model, which is what I showed. But we don't have an option. It's not flexible enough for you to change it. We have been talking. That's one of the other improvements that I want to have next year is that we have some project data. So every single time you don't have to go and select the location and weather file. So just set it once, similar to how like Revit is, for example. And then all the weather data, north, all those information is basically now tied to your project. So we know what's the weather file, we know where is the north, you know, all that. So that should give more flexibility in that sense. But right now, no, it's mostly we assume the model is set like the way that it works. And then, you know, you change the north input for your simulations, mostly, at least for window to wall ratio.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And the other question is about the non-planar surfaces. The other day I was working with a project. I got the validation error. It gave me non-planar surfaces. And as you mentioned that you don't need to do anything with manually, I want to know if there is any command that I can use it for this error.
Right. There is a video that I recorded online that, or at least a couple I did, that you can find on our YouTube channel. So basically, you can use Rhino commands in that case. Rhino has good commands to help you planarize faces. Yeah, we have, and you know, like in Ladybug and Legacy, we had this automated kind of like workflows to make things planar for you. But then we decided not to do it because it was causing issues. And Chris is sharing a component in.
Yeah, we still do have it, but it's you know, it's very optional with, you know, with the ability for you to change all the meshing parameters. So you could always use this, you know, like I tried to design the routines of this to planarize it in the way that you'd want it for energy simulation, such that yeah, anything that's curved, like it'll preserve the solidity of the B rep if you're passing in a solid B rep that is curved surfaces, that should be preserved by this component. And it should also just merge with any like coplanar triangles in the process. But yeah, but I mean, it's always on a case by case basis. Like, I mean, yeah, this is mostly made for solid B reps that you may want to planarize. I mean, yeah, if you're working from extrusions, like the video that Mustafa recorded for that is a really good example of how to do that with native Rhino commands. Are you looking for that now, Mustafa, of your the post you made recently?
Actually going to show this because this is a change that comes probably in a few weeks or something. And then if someone watches it in the future, if you want to start a new, this is on a staging, so the database needs to wake up. But if you want now to run a new study, this is the one that I was mentioning. So instead of clicking on that plus thing and bringing down, you know, like all the list of something that you don't know. So this is now looks very similar to what we're used to, right? You have a list of recipes. You can select the version that you want for that recipe. And then you click on the recipe, it starts a new study for you. So this will be the new user interface instead of what we have. This might be a good one. I have 3 minutes left to wrap up the workshop with the rest of this presentation. I mean, I'm not going to show the typical slides that I have. I only want to just go through this and give you a sense of the next steps. So one of the things that we are working on, and you probably saw a glimpse of it, is we are adding, and this is high risk for me to run right now because this is still under development. But for example, for something like a direct sunlight study or and it will take some time to come, or a sun path radiation study. All of this, we are developing apps to basically make it easier to access them from inside Rhino. So you don't have to use Grasshopper, so more people can use these functionalities. That's one. Oh, it just showed up. So now you can see for something like this, now you can have a sun path, you can select the weather file, you can also even load it from, EPW map if you want. So I can click here and send it to the browser, right? And then it will change to that location that I had selected from here. And then from there, you can basically do all the things that we like to do, right? You want to put data on top of your sun path, you can do that. So this is two legends on top of each other. Let me move this. So now you can see relative humidity on top of the sun path, right? You can change those single day to be multiple days during the year, all this. You can even do shadow studies if you want. You can change the scale of this to be, 500. So now that's the sun path. So kind of like we're trying to bring these features to the Rhino plugin without the use of any use of basically Grasshopper. So let me put this on a single day, and then you can even do shadow analysis. You can do view from sun, all this typical thing that people really want to do from inside Rhino without using Ladybug Tools Grasshopper. So more people in your office can access those. So that's one of the big ones on our list that, as you can see, we are already developing. They're private, they're really public at some point. And we have custom HVAC modeling that we have developed during the last year, which is actually in a very good place, but we haven't done enough video tutorials on that. So one of the things that people ask, and you see these are kind of the two ends of the spectrum in a way. Some people, they say, okay, the geometry is there, this is great. We want to do very simple things that we used to do with Ladybug Tools, like sun path, move things around, get real-time radiation, real-time direct sunlight. That was one end of it. The other end was, if you have this energy model, we can do geometry, we can do all the program types. We want to do HVAC on top of this. We want to do code compliance, And that's another, so basically these are the two ends that we are working on. And of course, the UI can be improved. Some of them are inside Rhino, some of them more on the web interface that we have that we use from inside Rhino and Revit that I hope, like I just showed you a glimpse of what we are trying to do. So we are trying just basically to close the gap from everything that we have developed. Any questions? Comments? So we are technically at the end of the time. So let me stop this and do our kind of like, let's everyone has any comment, last comments here before we wrap it up. And again, thank you for joining. I know it's late. In some of the time zones, it's like after midnight, right? It's just like early morning, I think now in Japan. It's just, I feel bad.
AECtech.
Yeah, I just feel that. But at the same time, I hope you get, like, the workshop was good for you to get a sense of the possibilities, what's possible to do, what's the direction. As usual, the plugin is here. If some of you were here last year too, and you saw how much we have come, like, it's more stable, we have more commands, we have more routines. This is only because you guys gave us feedback, right? And we use it for projects ourselves and we see points. So again, let's keep doing that because that's something that has been really successful. And if you have any comments or suggestions right now, we have the next few minutes to discuss.
Yeah, I just want to add, this has been super useful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mustafa and Chris, for showing us. And again, the recording will be available soon, in a few days, once we're all out of the rush of AECtech, I guess. And
Right.
yeah, if you've signed up for the workshop, then you should be getting links to where to grab that. And I'm sure they can reach out to you guys as well.
Yeah, absolutely. but don't reach out this afternoon. It will take some time before we get it. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And thank you, AECtech, for having us every year. This is just like our annual review of showing what we have done. You know, once a year. We do other workshops, but this ones are like we basically we set our goals to get to something before these workshops and present them. Yeah, is there any other last minute questions? Or do you want me to stop recording and then there will be like after recording questions usually?
Yeah, perhaps I can ask Mustafa, by any chance, are you planning to have any early stage embodied carbon assessments in the long term?
So the answer has been, and again, it's just we don't, and it's very possible to write an app. The challenge has been about finding the right data sets, right? And it's something it's not on top of the list. Let's put it that way, because I have seen other solutions. I'm still skeptical of like having good data sets available. But for the energy simulation part, we actually have some functionalities that we should just expose, right? And we talked about that and we haven't done it. I think that's something that we can do. But if you're talking about the material part, that needs like us to write new exporter to get the quantity from the geometry. And we also need to link into data sets that make sense. I have been cautious. I think we have been cautious about doing it. And I feel really bad when I say it, to be honest, but
Yeah, I mean, we could easily write something that gives you like all the exterior facade area. Like if you want to do your own calculations, you
and
know,
we have
yeah,
that.
and we
We
have
have
like
that
an
app.
app
It's
that
called,
does that
yeah,
already. So
the
you can
model
get like,
table.
yeah, the interior, yeah, the amount of interior floor area, and then if you know the constructions or you know the amount of exterior facade area, you can do some of the calculations yourself if you know what the embodied energy of those things are.
No, exactly, Chris. There are just some tools, on the market that they can do everything. So that's why I just want to know if there is any future plan involved for just making such an assessment.
Yeah, I mean, yes, future. Hopefully, if after some time, like if the data sets are there, we have the base to just give you a very clean geometry, and that means like good quantities, right? But we have enough left to do in the energy, daylight, comfort, area for the next year. I don't think we want to jump there. And I know for some offices, that's kind of like the decision-making thing of like, oh, we're going to go with that software because it does everything, right? Yeah, like it does everything, but how accurate, how reliable the results are, that has been our approach to making always the decision about next steps.
That's just
And
like embodied, right? Mustafa, can we like do operational carbons? Or no?
Operation Carbon, yes, we can add that. Yes,
Okay.
Operation Carbon, right?
We actually already have it.
We
Yeah.
already have it. We have to expose it. So Operation Carbon, I think, like, and people have asked, and I think we should put it on top of the list. So Operation Carbon, we have a good integration with the NREL dataset. Chris
Yeah.
will correct
So
me.
at least in the US, yeah,
In
we
the
have
US, we
like
have,
we can do it by location.
and I think the last time we talked, the reason we stopped was like, okay, what would we do for the places that we don't have the right numbers? And then we have to expose it for people to put the values in. Yes, operational, we can actually expose. And I think we will expose it as soon as like we solve the thing in the Revit side. As I said, one of the goals is for you to be able to run those models from inside Revit. And from inside Rhino, you already can run like whole building energy models, valid with custom HVAC and everything. So yes, it just makes sense to expose that because we have the functionality already built in.
Okay. Yeah, because I've been getting a lot of questions with some of the partner Stantec locations about this. Especially knowing that I kind of work with Pollination Ladybug, they kind of want to know, can I expose some carbon values for them? And I couldn't give them a firm yes yet. I told them like pretty much I don't think embodied is something that's there, but operational I should be able to find something for you.
Right. Yeah. Operation we already have. That's correct answer. For embodied, again, it takes new geometry and The data set is just my concern. I feel like, okay, I stop
Well,
here. I already
yeah.
said how I feel.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like it just we don't want to have garbage out on a
Yeah.
steroid, you know, like it's I still feel I know like the market has changed a lot from the time that we started doing Ladybug Tools and like, but still it's just we see this as something that people use to make decisions. And really, if you just give some data, not everyone is in the place to understand like what is right and what's wrong. And of course, whatever we do at some point, people can do wrong, but we want to make sure we have done minimum job to make sure like people can get the right answers if they do it right. For embodied, we're not there. For operational, at least in the US, we have a good data set, we have implemented it, and we should be able to give you those values.
For operational, isn't the annual database or data set based off average emissions? Do you have anything for marginal emissions, like hourly marginal emissions from lot time, for example?
So they're actually the NREL does have hourly data, so you can actually get hourly plots of carbon emissions. If you want to drill into it, I can point you to the exact measure. I mean, yeah, I didn't necessarily expose that exact capability in Grasshopper because there's the component that we have will just, yeah, it'll do the total annual thing. But yeah, but there's a measure that actually uses the NREL database has some hourly profiles of carbon emissions that you can use to, you know, because obviously, yeah, if you're using more of your energy at a peak time, right, that should be more carbon intensive because that's when everyone's switching on the gas-fired turbines and everything.
We can maybe pick it up after the call or something, but yeah, the idea of marginal emissions is different than average emissions, right? That's emission of the next kilowatt hour of demand, right? So
I mean, yeah,
next kilowatt. Sorry.
I mean, maybe I don't, by marginal, so you mean something more than just like hourly, having an hourly annual profile of carbon intensity of the grid, or
yeah,
or
no, it is hourly, but it's a marginal emission versus average. Look up like watt time. You know,
okay,
it was being used for like real time difference in carbon emissions. But anyway, we can talk about it after.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to veto that.
Okay,
let's like that too, because that's too much for the writer work. But one thing I can show here for because you asked, so we have this app which is called what's the name? Which is called Model Table. Like we probably should change the name, but this one does a facade area takeoff. So if you have the model, it basically gives you, you know, room by room, exterior area for exterior area apertures and in different orientation. And you can also download this as a CSV file. So this can be a good base of model takeoff. And it works the same from Revit or Rhino. So if you want just to get the quantities of the facade, we have that. You can do that. And I think our parser, it's pretty accurate comparing to the other ones that are available. So it should give you a very good estimate of where things are. You know, it's just like a multiply this with a number, right? And give you another number. But then it's always like, do you want just to let people just multiply things? And I have heard this thing of like, oh, it's early design is comparative all my life. But at the same time, I have seen how people early design comparative have made wrong decisions because they just don't do the due diligence. So yeah, we're trying not to do that. But we will give you the operational one. And I think Victor has like some really detailed way of calculating it that we can discuss later. Any other questions or comments, feedback?
It's gonna go high level with something that when this was, I remember back in the early days of Pollination, you had these like kind of, you show it sometimes now too, of like the workflow diagram and like the acceleration you can get and, you know, your colleagues out of the office and all this stuff, right? And I remember there used to be this idea that you could, you know, if there was a change that was made, you could kind of sync that change in the ecosystem. And then for a lot of the effort seemed to be focused on from start to finish, it's faster, more efficient. But longer term, is there like mid design or there's some changes, other ways to go start halfway through and then inject that new data in? And especially if you've already gone to third-party software, is there a way to look at interoperability between that and then update the geometry but keep the metadata you have in that third-party software? Or is that, you know, or even the option in Pollination ecosystem?
Sure. So we haven't give up on the idea. The command is there. It's called PO-sync model. You can basically select another model and then sync it with the existing model. Here, we even have an app for it, but we don't use it as much. Again, the reason I think that we didn't give up on the idea, but we realized, where the industry is. Again, the command is PO-sync model. You can just try it on your own and see how it works. It's just we realized that there are not that many people in the industry that can make these models and understand all the concepts. And we have to make it really easy for getting the model out to be able to introduce this. This is kind of like a next level functionality. We're still seeing a lot of people are just struggling to get a valid model out, at the right time. And I think it's natural when we make these things easier and easier, we will go back and say, hey, people, we don't have to talk about how to make a valid model anymore because you know how to do that. Let's talk about merging models. Let's talk about, result visualization. Let's talk about how you run these studies and run parametric things, kind of like where we got with Ladybug at some point. We're back, we're building everything from base. And that's why I focused the whole workshop just talking about geometry. So people can get comfortable with this. And I think this was like how it was in code and software development, right? Software, they got to a place that they can do things quickly. You can deploy them quickly. You can have great editors to just debug your code. And then it came the time that people say, oh, now you can basically, I want to send you my changes of code and merge it in your source code. I think we're going to get there. No, we haven't given up in it, but I think what they call it, overshoot the market. I think that's the terminology. I think that's what we did. We were really hopeful for everyone to love that kind of concept stuff. Well, we were great to merge all these things, but then we realized that's not where the industry is. We have to do one step at a time. Yeah, and I see in the chat the emission conversation is live. It's there. No, it's all good. If there is no, that's why we do this. If there is no other questions or comments related to the Rhino plugin, I'll just stop recording and then we can continue the conversation. Yep. Okay. Nothing here. So I'm going to stop recording. Thank you, everyone, again, and hopefully we'll see you next year.